Yeah. Alright, so we're going to be talking a bit about the Destro Lock today, doing a real quick guide on it. One thing I do have to say about the Destruction Lock is the fact that this spec, going from its normal heavy burst, it really has changed from that, to where you have these huge burst periods. Now it's more of a fluent spec, to where you're working on maintaining and controlling your shards a bit tighter than what you used to, and you can't Chaos Bolt spam as much. Really a different feel. The new mastery is kind of a put off, but we'll go over that in the stats here just a bit. But right now, let's take a look at a couple of the items that you're gonna have to look at as you go into this guide to actually help you make decisions. The first thing we're gonna end up looking at is going to be the Fragment of the Dark Star, which is the Archimon trinket. What it does is Incinerate increases the critical strike chance of your spells against that target by 2% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. This will give you an additional 10% critical strike on a target. Really, what this is going to end up helping you out with is a lot of different things. This is mainly going to help you out in Soul Shard generation through the new Immolate. And we'll definitely go over that here in a few minutes also. But this is definitely going to be a buff that you're going to want to control and try and keep up, at least right now in the 7.0.3 pre-Legion launch patch. Now the next one we're going to go over is going to be your actual tier 18 set. And what it's going to do is your 2 set's going to reduce the cast time of your Chaos Bolt by 0.5 seconds and increases its damage by 2%. And then your 4 set, your Chaos Bolt has a 12% chance to not consume a Soul Shard. So this is going to allow you to do a few more Chaos Bolts without actually having any issues. Now with this being known, let's go ahead and take a quick look at the talents and see exactly what we're going to be looking at in the talents and how they're playing out. So here we are looking at the talents. Now the main thing that we got to look at with the talents is tier 15 you have Backdraft, Roaring Blaze, and Shadowburn. Backdraft currently, Incinerate doesn't do enough damage to really worry about the reduced cast time, and Chaos Bolt, if you're running the tier 18 already, you don't really need that additional time off of it. Roaring Blaze is going to be the default choice, as it's going to do a mass increase on your Immolate dot, as long as you're casting Immolate and then Conflagrate right after it. Shadowburn's also pretty exceptional, except that's going to be situational if you have ads coming in and you can really get the benefit of the Soul Shard return. Level 30, you've got Reverse Entropy, Cataclysm, and Mana Tap. Mana Tap currently makes a rotation too clunky to really worry about, as whenever you cast Mana Tap, you're also going to have to cast Life Tap, and that's 2 global cooldowns that you're going to end up losing in most situations. Cataclysm's going to be really awesome for fights that have a ton of ads that come in, like Zol or Manaroth. Both of those would be great fights for Cataclysm. The one that you're going to want to end up going with, though, is going to be Reverse Entropy. And the reason why I say this is that mana return just saves you that global cooldown. You never have to end up using Mana Tap, and it helps out a ton just in that situation. Allows you to always be casting, and you never have to worry about that additional step. Level 45, Demon Skin. It's going to be the top choice. These are all the same across the board. You've got Mortal Coil and Shadow Fury. Shadow Fury, if you need a little bit more ad control, can end up taking over Demon Skin, but most of the time, Demon Skin's just going to make it to where healers do not really have to focus on you. Level 60, you have Eradication, Fire and Brimstone, and Soul Harvest. Soul Harvest just doesn't really seem to fit right now. If you're really needing some additional burst, maybe it would end up doing alright, but currently it's just bottom of the tier. Fire and Brimstone, yet again, very solid for dungeons. It's also going to be very solid for Manaroth, Zul'Harrak, anything that has a bunch of ads come out. Because even though Incinerate doesn't do a whole hell of a lot of damage, if you have the Archimon's trinket, it's going to add those stacks onto every single mob, and it does do a solid amount of damage. And finally, single target. The choice in this tier is going to be Eradication, as that buff, even though it's a very short window, it is a solid amount of additional damage increase for single target. Level 75, you have Demonic Circle, Burning Rush, and Dark Pact. Demonic Circle really doesn't have a situation right now, but if you do have a predetermined spot that you need to be at, it still works pretty good. Burning Rush, if you need the extra movement, it's solid, but currently Dark Pact, having that extra cooldown for defensive just really takes the cake, especially if you need to do some soaking. Level 90, Grimoire of Supremacy, Grimoire of Service, and Grimoire of Sacrifice. Supremacy is just throw it out the window. It's not great for this situation. It'll be great for like a leveling scenario, but that's about it. Grimoire of Service, awesome for single target, very awesome, especially if you need some burst. But currently, if you're sitting with the 4-piece, you really don't need to end up worrying about it too much, as you're going to want to spend more of your soul shard generators. Instead of spending it on that 1.5 minute cooldown, you're going to want to spend it on a Chaos Bolt instead, since it has a larger chance of refunding a shard. The Grimoire Sacrifice, even if one ad comes in, this ends up taking the cake, and it also does very well single target if you have the 4 set. If you do not, Grimoire of Service is going to be the better way to go. Level 100, you have Wreak Havoc, Channel Demon Fire, and Soul Conduit. Wreak Havoc is very awesome in cleave situations. Basically, this will allow you to end up keeping Havoc up the whole entire fight. If you have 2 targets that you need to end up focusing down, you can end up doing it quite easily with that ability, and it's very nice. No cooldown left on Wreak Havoc, and it also makes it last 20 seconds instead of its standard duration. Channel Demon Fire, it is kind of weak, but at the same token, a lot of people are misusing this ability. This is going to be more for single target and not AoE. What you want to end up doing with this is making sure that it's always single target whenever you go to Channel Demon Fire, and it does a huge amount of burst while it's up. If you have Immolate on multiple targets, you're just doing the same amount of damage spread over different targets. It's not much different than some of your other abilities that you see on other classes. And what you want to do is, if you're going to use Channel Demon Fire, make sure it's single target. And currently, it's going to be more effective if you're not running the 4-piece T18. But if you are running the 4-piece, Soul Conduit's going to take over, as you're going to get an additional chance through Soul Conduit to get more casts off with Chaos Bolt, and it just overall performs better and seems a bit smoother than what Channel Demon Fire would. Alright, so next up we're going to be talking a bit about the general rotation priority. Now, the general rotation priority is going to consist of what you're seeing up there, but we'll go over it real quickly. Havoc is going to be your main ability overall, just for the simple fact it's going to have the highest chance of increasing your overall damage. Only if you're swapping between 2 targets, or you've got 2 targets that are up already. The amount of damage generation that you can get with this split over the time, especially if you ended up going Wreak Havoc, is going to be very, very solid. Next on the list is going to be Immolate, and you're going to want to maintain this on all of your main targets, up to 3, maybe more, depending on what you've got going on. If it's more than that, you're probably going to want to go Cataclysm and just run Cataclysm to keep it up as best as possible. The reason for this is it's going to be one of your main shard builders, and it has a chance to generate a shard on tick, but it's got double that chance if it's a critical strike tick. Next up is going to be Conflagrate, and what you want to do with Conflagrate is right after you cast Immolate, cast Conflagrate, especially if you're talented in the level 15 talent, to end up increasing the damage of Immolate, as Immolate's going to be a solid amount of damage for you, and it's also going to generate you a shard. The only time you don't want to do this is if you're at 5 shards already. If that's the case, you're going to want to end up casting Chaos Bolt first, and then Conflagrate. Chaos Bolt, you're going to want to use it around 4 to 5 shards, and you're going to want to stagger it a little bit to maintain the eradication buff if the talent is taken. Main way to end up staggering this is usually you want to toss out an Incinerate to keep your other buff up from your Archimon's Trinket if you have it, and then you're going to want to cast Chaos Bolt to keep the additional damage flowing, especially from Eradication. Now, Eradication is going to not only end up benefiting all spells cast in there, but it'll also, if you have another Chaos Bolt come in at that same time, it will benefit that Chaos Bolt and extend the duration. Incinerate's going to be your general filler, but again, the way you want to end up playing this is you're going to be a little bit on the back and forth, trying to use Incinerate in between each spell to try and maintain the buff from the Archimon's Trinket if you have it. If not, you're going to follow the general priority list a little bit more, and then Conflagrate, again, if you've got any extras and you still have Immolate up, even though you want to try and use it after each one, you can use this to generate additional shards as long as you're smart enough not to overcap. And make sure you always save one or have one coming up before your Immolate wears off so you can reapply Immolate and cast it yet again. Shadowburn, same situation. If it's talented and you have the targets there, make sure you're using this thing just before the target ends up dying so you can get the benefit of the soul shard return, because Shadowburn does cost 1 soul shard. You're looking at getting 2 back if it dies within the base period. Rain of Fire is awesome now. It does a lot of damage, even though it costs 3 soul shards. On 3+ targets, this thing will do an insane amount of additional damage compared to what it did before the patch. Rain of Fire was basically useless before the patch, but now as you can end up casting it and then casting while it's doing its thing, like the new Blizzard, it plays out very well and it hits extremely hard. Your pet of choice is going to be Imp unless you end up doing Sacrifice, then it won't matter. But your pet of choice being the Imp, the reason for this is because any target that's affected by your Immolate is going to end up getting increased damage done from the Imp itself. Summon Doomguard is also going to be your main burst cooldown, as it is across all your Warlocks, unless you end up taking the talent in the level 90 area, which hopefully you aren't. And it does still cost 1 soul shard to summon it. Same thing goes with the Grimoire Imp. If you talented into it, 1 soul shard to end up summoning this bad boy, and it'll end up doing a silly amount of damage for you while it's up. Now we're going to take a quick look at the general stat priorities. What you're looking at is Intel, obviously, increases every spell that you end up doing. Haste is fantastic because it reduces the cooldown time on multiple abilities that you end up having. It also ends up reducing the time between each tick on Immolate, therefore giving you a higher chance of generating soul shards. Crit is going to be the next, just for the simple fact that, again, same situation, Immolate ticks that crit have a double chance to end up getting an additional soul shard. And it also, overall, increases the damage of your Chaos Bolt, doing some insane amount of damage. Versatility is a little bit greater than Mastery. Now, the thing about Versatility is it's going to be a direct damage increase. If you feel lucky enough, Mastery may end up taking over, but I've seen with Mastery to where one fight I'll be doing an outstanding amount, topping the meters by a ton, and then the next one I'll be either middle of the road or close to the bottom just because of Mastery's effect. Really, if you can cut it out, you get rid of that RNG factor, you're going to do a lot better. But those two can be played back and forth, but currently Versatility kicks it in the nuts a little bit just for the simple fact that it's got a bit of an edge because it's an overall gain, as where Mastery is a roll of the dice each spell. So with all of this stuff in mind, the main thing you want to think of is each individual fight as you end up coming to it. Are there going to be ads? Are there not? The nice part about this spec is the fact that its talent tree actually is diversified and does a really good job at playing out. I'm a little bit surprised at how smooth that Destruction's actually playing right now. I've never cared for the spec much before, but after going through and playing Affliction and Demonology, now we've got Destruction, and Destruction overall just seems to have the smoother change for swapping targets, for going from trash fights to bosses. Overall, you can spec this thing any way you need to and still do very good with very little ramp up time, so you can still stay competitive. Demonology needs a very long fight to end up really doing great. Same thing goes for Affliction. Destruction doesn't have that limitation, and it does very well in that situation, so make sure that you're paying attention. Always keep some Tomes of the Clear Mind on you, that way you can end up changing your talents as you end up going, because certain fights are definitely going to look a lot better than others if you've got the Tomes of the Clear Mind. With this, guys, I hope you enjoyed yourself, and as always, thanks for watching.